Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 621. Is that a lie? After hearing Mei Shuiyan's words, Jun Moxie's eyes flashed and he instantly decided to lie. Yes. Lie. He would fabricate a well-intentioned lie after telling his mother everything. He would say that he came into the tutelage of a powerful saint and learned numerous powerful techniques. However, his current cultivation was too shallow and was not enough to go against the heavens and raise a person from the dead. However, he would forge ahead vigorously to increase his strength and revive father. This way, his poor mother would have a strand of beautiful hope, and so continue to live on strongly. Although this was a huge lie, but it was much better than losing hope completely. Although he was lying, this deceit, how much love must he have to bear to utter it? Although it was a lie, it was a sincere gesture from a son to his mother. As long as there was hope, the future would not be dark anymore. As for the matters of the future, he would think about it in the future, but for now, he would take things one step at a time. If she continued on like this, she might relapse into her deep depression again. The matters of the future, who can say for certain what would happen? Outside the door, Fang carried a bowl of bird's nest in her hand and walked in. Seeing Jun Moxie half lying on the pillow and staring blankly at the wall, she chided lightly. You little brat. Your injuries are still not healed. What are you moving around for? Quick. Lie down properly. What were you thinking of that caused you to become so entranced? Jun Moxie smiled, not replying immediately. Instead, he looked seriously at Fang in the eye and furrowed his brows slightly. Mother. I want to tell you something. Can you believe me? It might sound a little ludicrous, but I hope that you can believe me. Believe. Whatever my son says, I will believe it. No matter how ludicrous it is, I will choose to believe it. Fang smiled warmly and said as she scooped a spoonful of bird's nest porridge, blew on it lightly, and tested the temperature with her own tongue before bringing it to her son's mouth. Come, open your mouth. Eat more. And recover quickly. It's not hot at all, ah. Jun Moxie smiled bitterly as he looked at his mother taking care of him like a 3-year-old child. But that kind of feeling was strangely not awkward at all. Instead, it felt intoxicating, really intoxicating. Mother, I'll show you something nice first. Watch carefully. Jun Moxie swallowed the spoonful of porridge and excitedly stretched out his right hand. A small seed sat in the middle of his palm. Isn't that a flower seed? What's nice to see about it? Could it be a rare seed? Fang smiled and narrowed her eyes. It's just a very normal flower seed. But watch carefully. Jun Moxie smiled mysteriously as he quickly urged the power of wood in his body. Following that, an extremely amazing transformation happened, causing Fang to open her mouth wide with shock, almost dropping the delicate bowl of porridge in her hand. The black-colored little seed in Jun Moxie's palm writhed and green roots grew out from it. Following that, thin shoots slowly extended, almost as if they were being tugged at by the wind, rapidly growing with a speed visible to the naked eye. Stalk, roots, branches, leaves, slowly, it grew into a 3-chi tall flower plant. Its stalk was only as thick as a thumb. The miracle had yet to conclude, and the transformation was not yet finished. A bud grew out of the top of the plant, and slowly expanded to a pink flower. Slowly growing and blossoming. In the time it took for a pot of tea to boil, 9 resplendent roses appeared in Jun Moxie's hand, filling the room with the sweet fragrance of roses. This, what's going on? Is it a magic trick? Fang Wen Xian's mouth were wide open and her eyes grew round like a little child at a carnival. Seeing the fully grown rose plant sitting in her son's hand, her tongue was tied with shock. Magic tricks are just that, tricks done with props. But this is a real flower. Mother. Smell it. Is it fragrant? Jun Moxie smiled proudly and offered the flowers to his mother. In that moment, he was like a little kid who'd found a toy and wanted to show it off to his mother. Is it real? But how is it possible? Fang Wen Xian was extremely shocked, and she finally could not bear it as she reached her hand out, touched the roses, raised them to her nose, and sniffed it. She could clearly smell that these flowers were definitely real. In her agitation, she used a bit too much strength on her hand. With a light ah, her finger had been pricked by the rose's thorn, causing a drop of blood to flow out. So it seems that this was not a dream. It really wasn't a dream. A miracle like this was actually real. A miracle like this had actually taken place in front of her eyes. Mother, this is not an illusion or a parlor trick. It's real divine magic. When I saved Mother before and restored the vitality of those dying trees, it was also with this power. Jun Moxie looked seriously at Fang Wen Xian. The power of this magic is not limited to just this. My current cultivation is still too shallow. But there are greater miracles for this power. And when I've trained it to a certain level, it's even possible to move the mountains and fill the oceans. Grab the stars out of the skies. Wither an entire forest in an instant. Or turn a desolate desert into a vibrant jungle with a single thought. Of course, it could also restore a person from deathly illnesses. Or even raise a normal person's cultivation to the supreme realm in an instant. He looked steadily at Fang Wen Xian and uttered each word clearly. At the highest level, it'll be a simple matter to create bodies of flesh and blood. If I can connect to the spirit world, it's possible to even bring the dead back to life. Fang Wen Xian's mind went blank the moment she heard those words. She felt a wave of giddiness smash into her head as her body swayed twice, and the intricate porcelain bowl in her hand slipped out of her relaxed grip. With a loud pa sound, the bowl clattered loudly onto the ground. The sound was so incredibly crisp and loud, as though it was striking a resonance with the impact on her heart. Following that, Fang Wen Xian's body tottered and she collapsed weakly. On the side, Mei Shuayan hurriedly stretched her hand out and caught her. In just a moment, Fang Wen Xian began to wake. The moment she woke up, she reached for the roses before her, caressing them anxiously, as if she'd gone mad. Although she was pricked continuously by the thorns, it was as if she could not feel the pain at all. There was only a fascinated look on her face and tears ran down her cheeks. It was as if the thing in her hand was not a bunch of flowers, but a dream. A dream she could touch with her hands. With Fang Wen Xian's intelligence, how could she not understand the meaning behind Jun Moxie's words? She did not dare to believe it, but the miracle was right in front of her eyes. In a few short seconds, an ordinary seed sprouted and bloomed. The miraculous life-giving magic had appeared before her eyes. For such an amazing magic, was there a task too difficult for it? Her son had also said earlier that his current cultivation was too shallow and his mastery of the technique was too weak. But even such a low level of skill was enough to create such a miracle. If it really reached a higher and more profound realm, what would happen? At this time, A flash of green light burst through the room. The strange little tree that was originally on Fang Wen Xian's chest had been placed onto a piece of jade ever since she'd woken up. But at this time, it felt Jun Moxie's release of the power of wood, and suddenly grew restless. It flew through the air, arriving before Jun Moxie and floating around his body in an anxious manner. Jun Moxie stretched out his hand and allowed the tree to land on his palm. With a move of his will, the Hongjun pagoda suddenly opened, and with a so sound, the little tree disappeared into his palm. Fang Wen Xian widened her eyes with shock again. This tree was no stranger to her at all. Although the old madam had only brought the tree to her after she'd sunk into unconsciousness, the tree had accompanied her for almost 10 years. It was an important figure in her dreams throughout all those years. It was only because of this little tree that she'd managed to hang on for 10 years. This little tree that had exhausted its essence energy had been revived because of her son, and now, it had willingly flown to his side. This son of hers truly had too many miraculous secrets on him. Or perhaps, anything was possible when it came to him. Jun Moxie could clearly feel that after the little tree entered the Hongjun pagoda, it seemed to have been led by something as it flew directly to the first level. There. Jun Moxie had originally kept the 2 pieces of soul-replenishing jade that he had obtained from the Xiao family. Suddenly, with a loud bang, the 2 soul-replenishing jades burst apart. The little tree flew in between the 2 pieces and landed slowly. The 2 pieces of soul-replenishing jade nestled perfectly beside the little tree, with it in the center. In that moment, 3 became 1, turning into a single, inseparable body. Numerous roots extended from the little tree and wrapped around the 2 pieces of soul-replenishing jade. This proceeding had greatly exceeded Jun Moxie's calculations, and no matter how hard he tried, he actually couldn't take them apart. This little tree had ran off in of its own accord, and taken up residence in his Hongjun pagoda. And now, he actually couldn't chase it out. This was the first time that Jun Moxie had encountered such a ridiculous matter. In that moment, he didn't know whether he should be laughing or crying. What should he do now? This was something that Grandma had nearly bankrupted the family to obtain. Now, just like that, he'd taken the entire thing away without any idea of what happened. At this time, Fang Wen Xian had also recovered her state of mind. However, her heart was still extremely agitated. Her mouth was raised in a sweet smile, and her eyes glistened with tears as she looked at her son happily. Moxie, son, what did you say? What were you trying to say? The intelligent Fang Wen Xian had already understood her son's intentions long ago, but she still wanted to hear the exact words from his mouth. I said, with time, I might be able to bring father back to life. Jun Moxie said seriously, putting emphasis on every word. However, I need time. I may need quite a lot of time. Hesitating a bit, his brows furrowed deeply as he took a deep breath and continued. Even my 2 elder brothers can be revived as well. Fang Wen Xian's body shuddered heavily, and her voice cracked. Can also be revived, can also be revived. Tears poured out of her eyes and she sat down weakly. So my ominous feeling was real. It's not just Wu Hui. Even. Mou. Mo Cho. My children, what happened? What exactly happened? Her heart suddenly constricted with pain, and she grabbed her face with her 2 hands. In the years that I was gone, what happened? Just what happened? Why is it that even? Mother, there's no need to be overly sad. Jun Moxie hardened his expression and said. I've said it just now. I can do it. I must do it. I can bring them all back to life. He sighed heavily and continued. But, the most important thing is still you, Mother. You must hang on at all cost. I can help you retain your youth forever, but your heart and mind, you must keep them well. Mother. Surely you don't wish to that when father and my 2 elder brothers return. They'll find you in an old and depressed state with wrinkles and sparse hair. Right? Or, because of being too depressed, mother becomes like a fragrance diminished and jade perished, passing away in deep sadness. If that happens, everything that this son is doing will become completely meaningless. At the end of the day, this is a magic that goes against the heavens. And it has its own limits. 3. That's already the limit. Please subscribe to this channel, so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 622. Dong Fang Family's Intelligence. I will live well. Xie. Don't worry. Your mother may be an incompetent mother, but I can still understand your meaning. Dong Fang Xie wiped her tears and straightened her back. Not to mention the trace of hope you've given mother today. Even if there is no more hope to see your father ever again, mother will not seek death anymore. Mother wants to watch you grow up into a man. Watch you dominate the entire world with your strength. Watch you and your wife start a family and carry my grandchildren. Mother also wants to watch with my own eyes how you take revenge for your father. Revenge. My vengeance has yet to be fulfilled, and my hate has yet to be sated. How can I seek death? Dong Fang Xie's eyes grew red and deep hatred could be seen on her face. Her eyes seemed to be burning as she gritted her teeth. Your eldest brother and second brother, just how did they die? Jun Moxie closed his eyes lightly and his brows dipped with pain. Blizzard Silver City's Xiao family. Even third Uncle Wu Yi was plotted against by them, and nearly ended up permanently crippled. He had to sit in a wheelchair for 10 years. Xiao family. Dong Fang Xie spat coldly. Killer of my husband. Murderer of my children. This hatred. Xiao family. When my injuries are healed, I'm preparing to set out from here, directly for Blizzard Silver City, to collect this debt of blood. The killing intent in Jun Moxie's eyes also blazed like a fire. What's the use of a mere promise? Snow-capped peak, it's time you collapse. Xiao family, it's time you're destroyed. Recover? You'll go after you recover? Dong Fang Xie was boiling with hatred a short moment ago, but she suddenly became worried again. Moxie. Don't be rash. This matter, you can take your time to plan. You must have absolute preparation. As she advised. Her tears suddenly fell again. Moxie. Mother now, only has you must not be rash. If anything happens to you too, mother will really have no hopes in life. If vengeance is too risky, mother would rather not have this vengeance. Mother. Don't worry. I know my strengths. I'll work hard to protect myself. Moxie sighed and said emotionally. If I don't have absolute confidence, I will definitely not act rashly. Mother only has Moxie. But Moxie also only has mother. Then, I can set my mind at ease. Dong Fang Xie nodded lightly. Her face flushed with happiness. Moxie, tell mother the truth. Your father, can he really be revived? Her voice was filled with uncertainty. She was anxious for the revival of her husband, but at the same time, was worried lest she should lose it. Her heart had already reached the limits of her endurance. I guarantee. If I'm lying to mother in any way, then I'll. Jun Moxie raised his hand, seriously swearing. Dong Fang Xie hurriedly placed a hand over his mouth. shaking her head. Don't swear. I'll believe you. I really do. Jun Moxie secretly breathed out a long breath of relief. In the next few days, Jun Moxie's body improved steadily, and Fang Xian's mood also stabilized. Even the paintings of Jun Wuhui in the room were taken down one by one and kept away solemnly by her. In her eyes, her grief for Jun Wuhui had already disappeared greatly, and was replaced with longing and hope. Although the lie he'd told was well-intentioned, Jun Moxie more or less felt somewhat guilty in his heart. But strangely, he felt even more of an unknown happiness. To carry on living with hope in one's heart, even if it's the faintest of hope, is still better than completely losing it all. On this day, in the Fang family's main hall, the old madam, the three Fang brothers, Jun Moxie, Mei Shuiyan, and Fang Xian were all sitting together. Fang Xian sat beside her son, raising her head to look at him from time to time. A faint smile of doting hung on her face. To her, no matter where her son had been, or how big he'd grown to, he would always be that buck-naked naughty child in her arms. The old madam's temperament had taken an obvious upturn. Her daughter, whom they had given up hope on, had awoken with great health and vitality. The visit from her grandson this time had brought them too many surprises. On top of that, he'd even brought back a beautiful granddaughter-in-law, and such a formidable one at that. These days, the old madam could be seen smiling and laughing happily every day. Her heart's knot had been untangled, and with Jun Moxie using his spirit energy to nourish her body, she felt as if she had grown younger by 10 over years. Even the domineering and fearsome aura that she had in the past had returned. At this time, she was looking through a report sent from the outside world. It was a thick stack of news, and her brows were furrowed, as if she was looking for something. In these years, the Fang family had relied completely on such news to maintain their connection to the outside world. Finally, with a dry cough, she pulled out a piece of the report. There are a few things here that are important. Everyone pay attention. Although we're no longer a part of the pugilistic world, some of our people will go out from time to time and bring back news for our younger generation in case they stir up any trouble and offend people they should not offend. Fang Wenqing and the other three brothers all nodded their heads. The old madam looked at Jun Moxie intently. Moxie, you're roaming the pugilistic world, and you must understand that certain people and certain forces must not be provoked at all costs. There is always a sky above a sky, and a man above a man. Do you understand? Jun Moxie looked up blankly, not quite understanding what the grandma was trying to say. But since it was an elderly's advice, he would acknowledge it first. A few days ago, there was a series of large battles. The three Holy Lands collectively sent out 90 of the strongest experts of the current era to surround the strongest figure of Tianfa, the Venerable Mei. But ultimately, their troops were defeated, and they were forced to retreat with heavy losses. The Tianfa Beast Queen Venerable Mei's strength is indeed shocking. I believe that even the leaders of those three Holy Lands are probably only comparable to her at most. When the old madam spoke to hear, Jun Moxie suddenly choked and coughed wildly. Mei Shuiyan also opened her eyes wide, and her entire face flushed red as she lowered her head. Jun Moxie was half suspecting that it couldn't be that this old grandma of his was purposely teasing them, right? The Venerable Mei that you are talking about was sitting shyly right before you. Everyone is already family now. Surely there's no need for such praise. The old madam stared at him sternly and continued. This matter is a huge whirlpool of trouble, remember. If you step into this whirlpool, don't mention the Fang family, even if all the great families of the world gathered together. it would be difficult to avoid being completely annihilated. Mother, is the quarrels between the three holy lands and Tianfa forest really that important? I know about the existence of the three holy lands. And it's even because of that trip to Tianfa forest that time that I found out about them. I've also seen a few high-ranked experts of the three holy lands. The three holy lands are naturally formidable. But to say that they can oppose all the great families of the world combined together, that's a bit too much, isn't it? Dong Fang Wenqing asked with some perplexion. Besides, that venerable Mei seems like a very reasonable person. The last time, at the Tian-Nan battle, the result was already set and Tianfa clearly held the advantage. However, they ultimately chose to pull their troops back. It's obvious that they did not wish to fight with humans. They could even be said to be broad-minded and magnanimous. I simply don't understand. Why would the forces who all carry the same name of three holy and one ferocious lands fight like that? What would you know? Firstly, the strength that you've seen of the three holy lands is just the tip of the iceberg. The true strength of those three holy lands are far beyond your imagination, and so much more terrifying. Secondly, there is definitely some large factor that caused them to fight like this. A battle of that level is definitely not something that regular Xian cultivators can influence. Those who get too close will die. And those who come in contact with it will have their entire family wiped out. Do not think that the situation looks fine just because you are looking from a distance. Let me tell you, if you encounter something like this, run as far as you can. Keep that pitiable misplaced sense of righteousness of yours away. In a battle like this, your sense of righteousness will be nothing but a joke. An extremely useless and laughable joke. The old madam berated mercilessly. The same goes for the two of you. The old madam's eyes shone coldly as she looked at Jun Moxie and Mei Shuayan as she warned. Although your current strengths are extraordinary, but matters like the three holy lands trying to kill Venerable Mei, it's better if you stay farther away. Jun Moxie and Mei Shuayan looked at each other and smiled bitterly. If there's a choice, we would of course love to stay away from such troubles, but we're directly involved in it. How can we stay away? However, just where did they get this information from? How come it only mentioned Venerable Mei, and nothing about Jun Moxie and the Jun family? This intelligence network of theirs is a little too dull, isn't it? Also, the assassin Chu Chi Hun is currently with the Venerable Mei, and is jointly chased by the three holy lands. An order was passed down to resort to every conceivable means to hunt him down and repay the debt of blood. The old madam sighed and continued. That Chu Chi Hun, also known as the Supreme Assassin, is a freak genius of an era. He comes and goes like a ghost, and kills without leaving a trace. But to go up against the three holy lands like this, it's somewhat an overestimation of his ability. So what if he could have an advantage once in a while? With the sturdy foundations the three holy lands have accumulated for tens of thousands of years, how could it be something that just a single Chu Chi Hun could withstand? Rushing in so recklessly, it's just purely gifting them his life. If Chu Chi Hun could hear the old madam's evaluation of him right now, he would definitely bawl with unresignation. Dear heavens, great earth, what kind of idiot son of a tortoise would willingly invite trouble like this? Even I myself am still not sure what is going on. Disaster had simply dropped from the sky onto my head. This daddy has already been pursued for such a long time, but still hasn't figured out the reason for it. Still, since Venerable Mei has already left Tianfa forest, following the battle against Tian-Nan, half of the conditions that our Dongfang family has been bound with have been fulfilled. The only one remaining now is to crumble the snow-capped peak. The old madam said in a low voice. The condition of driving the Xian beasts out of Tianfa forest has been fulfilled coincidentally. But the snow-capped peaks have stood for tens of thousands of years. How could it be so easy to crumble? That condition is simply too harsh. It might crumble tomorrow. Grandma, you can set your heart at ease. Heaven always opens a door for the kind-hearted. Jun Moxie said confidently. Scram to the side. What would a child understand? This kind of matter. Can it be done so simply? Our Dongfang family is not a benevolent family in the first place. If someone gives us a punch, we'll pay him back with 10 swords. Kind-hearted? Just how did Jun Xie, that old thing, teach you? The old madam huffed angrily as she lectured in her Dongfang family style. Moxie, your grandmother and your uncle are discussing serious matters. A child like you should not speak out of place. Dongfang Wen Xian chided gently before continuing in an unhappy voice. Mother. Moxie is still young. You're speaking so loudly. What if you scared him? When he grows up. The moment this sentence came out, both Jun Moxie and the old madam looked up stupidly, as if they had been struck by lightning. Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 623. Giving out pills. The old madam gaped wordlessly a few times before hardening her heart and saying, When Xian, it's not that mother wants to scold you, but there needs to be a limit to how much you dote on the child. Moxie is still young, but this child's cultivation is already higher than mine. No matter how high his cultivation is, he's still my son. Could it be that he's no longer my son if his cultivation is high? Dongfang Wen Xian continued in an unreasonable manner. Both the old madam and Jun Moxie were left completely speechless. Grandmother, let me look at these reports. Jun Moxie received the stack of documents and pored over them piece by piece. Mei Shuayan beside him also poked her head over to look with interest. She had the same questions in her heart. As they looked, the two furrowed their brows deeper and deeper. Strange. Too strange. These reports had clearly depicted fight between the three holy lands, even describing the battle in detail. However, there wasn't even a single word about Jun Moxie at all. Just what was going on? The two of them had clearly traveled together, walked side by side with each other, were ambushed together, and escaped from the encirclement together. But here, there was clearly no mention of Jun Moxie at all. How does one explain this? The two looked at each other and saw the same incredulity in the other's eyes. Mei Shuayan furrowed her brows and thought for a moment before transmitting her voice secretly. The three holy lands have probably removed your name from the reports on purpose in consideration for your master. This matter is highly possible. After all, an ambush like this, if they provoked your master's wrath, even the three holy lands would suffer. As long as they did not mention you, after this period passed, and you returned without harm, the matter would also dissipate into a minor matter. Makes sense. Jun Moxie came to an understanding. With the strength of the three holy lands, it was not a difficult matter to manipulate the news like that. Furthermore, the battle had happened in the middle of nowhere, and there was no one around to see it. Naturally, the news would follow whatever they said happened. Now that Moxie's strength had come into maturity, Shuayan is also his strongest aid. With such strength, it's not difficult to deal with the Xiao family, or even the entire Blizzard Silver City. Yunbichen has also not appeared for a long time already. There's not much to fear about Blizzard Silver City now. It's also about time for our Dongfang family prepares to step into the world again. No matter what, the snow-capped peaks must fall. Wen Qing, Wen Jian, Wen Dao, the assassins that the three of you were in charge of training. How are the results? How many have reached the specified benchmark? Dongfang Wenqing stood up and reported. For the sky-grade assassins, those who currently meet the mark numbers 36. For the earth-grade assassins, 71 have met the standards required. As for the mortal-grade assassins, there are currently 341. That won't do. The strength we can utilize is still too little. Too little. It's completely not enough for big missions. Step up the pace and train them. Even if they die from fatigue, you must train them up. Mo Xia can go towards Blizzard Silver City at any time. We hold an absolute advantage in the Battle of the Kings. But if the strength of our pawns cannot match up, how can that be good? I want at least 50 sky-grade assassins and 100 earth-grade assassins to follow Mo Xia to take his revenge. The assassins must also not be of our Dongfang family's surname. After all, we haven't fulfilled the oaths yet. The old madam harumphed coldly and gave the order. Even as Dongfang Wenqing and the others nodded in response, their expressions were somewhat ugly. Jun Moxie's chest grew warm. The reason Grandma was so anxious was for the sake of his revenge. Seeing this, he glanced at Mei Shuayan and nodded. Mei Shuayan nodded back in agreement and stood up. She took out a small jade bottle and smiled. Grandma, Shuayan has a few good items here. Perhaps with these, the problems you are facing won't be so difficult anymore. What's that? The old madam asked tentatively. The Dongfang family was currently cut off from the world. And to date, they didn't even know about the Jun family's production of divine pills. Although Dongfang Wenqing and the others knew about the 10 years Dan, they only mentioned it briefly when they returned, and didn't talk about it in detail. Thus, the old madam still didn't know. This is something that Mo Xia's master refined. This is a 10 years Dan. Each pill can raise a cultivator's Xian Qi by the equivalence of 10 years. There are 2 bottles here, and each bottle contains 100 pills. These 2 bottles contain the bone-tempering pills, which can be used to refine and remodel a person's body. There are similarly 200 pills in total. The Dongfang family can use them to nurture your younger generation's members. Mei Shuayan smiled and introduced. When she mentioned the few words, Mo Xia's master, she stumbled a little on her words before continuing. As for these 3 bottles, they are the truly rare divine pills. This is the vitality linkage pill. Regardless of one's foundations, it can forcefully improve the circulation speed of Xian Qi in one's meridians to 3 times faster than before. This is the Vitality Congregation pill. Consuming one will improve a Xian cultivator's cultivation speed to increase by 3 times. And finally, there's the Heaven Vitality pill. It can directly improve one's strength by 50 years' worth of cultivation. These 3 pills are extremely rare, and there are only 10 of each. They are prepared specially for Grandma and the 3 uncles. If you want to give them to others, you must remember that only experts who have exceeded at least the peak of Sky Xian realm can consume them. Otherwise, they would end up self-exploding from the forceful power in the pills. In this period of time, Jun Moxie had refined quite a large number of these pills, and they so happened to be useful now. The pills that Mei Shuayan took out was actually just a small portion of his collection. With the Dongfang family's current strength, they wouldn't be able to use the pills even if he gave them more. Just this amount he'd taken out was already more than 3 times what they could use. As Mei Shuayan introduced the pills, the old madam, Dongfang Wenqing, and the rest all sucked in a breath of cold air at the start. and their mouths grew wider and wider towards the end, as if they would never close again. To them, pills like these with such miraculous effects was simply something that had never appeared, even in the legends. However, they were being pulled out one by one like rabbits in a hat before their eyes. Fang Wen Xian's face was extremely agitated, and her eyes glowed with even more hope. Miracles seemed to abound endlessly around her son. Did that mean that he might really have some kind of divine ability? Could it be that everything that Xie had told her was true? Although she said that she believed his words, she was still quite skeptical about it deep in her heart. In fact, she'd mostly said that she believed him just to not let him down. After all, a concept of raising someone from the dead was an incredibly unimaginable thing. How could it be taken so lightly? But right now, in this moment, her heart had a bit more confidence in her son. Her hope had truly been ignited. The old madam's face was also incredibly agitated. Taking a deep breath, she shook her head. Xie, these things are far too valuable. How could we use them? Grandma, you are treating me as an outsider with those words. I, Jun Xie, am a grandson of the Dongfang family. Everyone here is family. What's there to be polite about? Besides, if we talk about value, in this world, what is valuable than family? Jun Xie smiled suavely. So, if we must talk about worthiness, it's me who is unworthy of such a great family. I even feel that these pills are too little in value compared to you all. Good. Well said. This sentence is too well said. In this world, what can be more valuable than family? The old granny smiled and sighed. Just with these words, Xie, I can say that you've truly grown up. When Xian, you should be proud of your son. He may be young, but he knows even more things than you. You need to follow the example of your son. Dongfang Wen Xian's face turned red, and she lowered her head in shame. However, she felt extremely glad in her heart. Because that's my son. Although mother had scolded her, she was still praising her son. That alone made her even happier than if she was the one being praised. Xie, do you have any proper plans with regards to Blizzard Silver City? How do you want to carry out the attack? The old grandma kept the jade bottles away carefully and asked with seriousness. Blizzard Silver City? There isn't any plans. Jun Xie scratched his brows lightly. It's just crumbling the snow-capped peaks, flatten the Silver City, and drag the members of the Xiao family out one by one and put them to death. What plans do we need? This is still called no plans. If you had a plan, wouldn't the entire snow mountain be trampled clean by you? Third Uncle Dongfang Wen Dao said with a shock. He was sucking in the cold air so hard that his teeth hurt. In all things, you must always plan first before taking action. It is better to be safe than sorry. You must not be rash. Don't think that just because you are stronger than others, you can step over others easily. An overinflated self-confidence will instead blind yourself. There is always a sky above a sky, and a man above a man. There will always be someone stronger than you. The old grandma advised painstakingly. Grandson understands. I plan to stay here for a few more days, and then leave the Dongfang family and return to the Jun residence to make preparations for attacking Blizzard Silver City. Jun Xie promised and said respectfully. Oh, that's good as well. Wen Xian, what about you? The old grandma turned and looked at her daughter. Dongfang Wen Xian fell silent for a moment before saying, I naturally want to follow my son back. I'm still the Jun family's daughter-in-law ultimately. For so many years, I haven't fulfilled my duties to my parents-in-law at all, which is very unfilial. Now that I've woken up, I need to make up for these 10 years of absence, bit by bit. Otherwise, how will I be able to face Wu Hui? How will I face my two poor children? The old madam breathed out a long sigh and raised her face to look into the distance. After a long time, she closed her eyes and said in a forlorn voice, "That's good too." She lowered her head and looked at her daughter. Her gaze was filled with tenderness and protectiveness, full of longing and unwillingness. However, she still steeled her voice and said sternly, "Dong Fang Wen Xian, since you've made your decision, Mother will not stop you. However, you must remember this. You are a mother, and you must firstly, not let down your own mother, your in-laws, and heaven and earth. After that will be your son, your daughters-in-law, and your future grandchildren. I don't want to see you being carried back here again in an unconscious state again. Do you understand?" Dong Fang Wen Xian smiled and her eyes softened. "Mother, please don't worry. Your daughter has thought things through already. I will never bring shame to the Dongfang family again." "If that's the case, good." The old madam closed her eyes and said no more. That afternoon, Jun Moxie and Mei Shuayan took a trip around the Dongfang family training ground, accompanied by the three uncles. He provided many useful training tips to improve the family's training regime. With his experience as the king of assassins and detailed pointers, every word was noted down by Dongfang Wenqing and the rest as if they were precious treasures. They were just short of taking a pen and paper and following behind him, writing down every single word that came out of his mouth. After that, Jun Moxie prepared and wrote out a training plan and passed it to Dongfang Wenqing. This was his own training regime in his previous life, with a few things cut out. Jun Moxie was confident that with the Dongfang family's foundations, if they used this training plan as the base for the future, the day when the family would rise up again in the pugilistic world will be near. The Dongfang family prepared a huge feast that night, and everyone gathered together joyfully. Jun Moxie took the chance to raise his request for the little tree. Even if he didn't want to bring it up, it was impossible. That little fellow has already ran into my body and refuses to come out. What can I do? Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 624. The Trick to Raising Children. The old madam agreed very quickly and straightforwardly. "We're not too sure what that thing is anyway. In any case, we got it coincidentally, and it only seems to nourish the human body. Apart from that, there doesn't seem to be anything special about it. It's useless for training and cannot raise one's cultivation. It only so happened to be useful for maintaining your mother's life force. If it wasn't of use to your mother, we would have already dumped it a long time ago. If you want it, take it. If you see anything else you like here, take a few more with you." Jun Moxie rolled his eyes speechlessly. With a single look, it would be obvious that the little tree was a heavenly treasure, yet the old madam said that she nearly threw it away. Although he knew that she only said that to make him feel less guilty about taking the tree away, he still felt some indignation for the little tree. That was because he could tell that the old madam really did not care much for the little tree. That much was impossible to fake. Actually, not to mention the old grandma, even Jun Moxie had no idea what this little tree was. But although he didn't recognize it, he was sure of one thing. Something that the Hongjun Pagoda approved of was definitely something good and rarely seen on Earth. This was something that definitely would not be wrong. The Dongfang third master sat together with his wives and children, smiling smugly. Dongfang Wenqing and Dongfang Wenjian looked at him enviously, while the numerous wives around them looked away depressedly. When women reached a certain age, how could they endure their inner maternal instinct and they saw other people playing with their children? After settling several of the heavy matters in his mind, Jun Moxie was in an extremely jovial mood today. Seeing his uncles nearby, he sidled up slyly and asked, "First uncle, what's wrong? There's so many ants here. But you haven't managed to pop out any cute cousins for me to play with? Isn't that too much of a waste? You think I don't want to make any? Your grandma hasn't stopped nagging me over this matter." Dongfang Wenqing glared at him huffily. "All these women are too disappointing. What can I do?" Jun Moxie rolled his eyes at this. If one or two wives failed to live up to expectations, that was still possible. But if one wanted to say that all 59 wives are unable to bear children, then Dongfang Wenqing's luck was a little too terrifying. With this kind of probability, he could go and buy the lottery directly, and he would strike the first prize every single time. Why won't you say that the problem lies with you? Jun Moxie snorted in disdain. With a squint of his eyes, he leaned closer to his first uncle's ears. "I actually have a little bit of knowledge in this area. My third uncle Jun's leg was cured by me. So if first uncle is willing to trust me, I dare to guarantee that next year this time, you'll be hugging a cute baby. Or even several cute babies." "Really?" Dongfang Wenqing sat up straight and looked at Jun Moxie, his eyes as wide as a pair of lanterns. His breath grew somewhat heavy as he grabbed his nephew's hand. "You're not lying to me, right?" The people around him jumped lightly in shock at this sight. "Feck! What's this first master doing? How would I lie to you? This is absolutely true." Jun Moxie smiled mysteriously. "Actually, I could tell with a single glance that it's not just you. Second uncle actually has the same problem, right?" Dongfang Wenqing's face grew slightly red as he shifted uncomfortably in his seat. "AI, don't mention it. It's truly a great misfortune in our family. So it turns out that you all weren't well controlled in your youth, ah." Jun Moxie sighed pretentiously, and his tone grew heavier. Loose years in one's youth often lead to a lifetime of bitterness. This saying is the same for both men and women. Although people often say that one would have wasted their youth if they didn't indulge themselves. But everything should have a limit. These words were spoken by Dongfang Wenqing to Jun Moxie back in Tiannan. But today, their roles had been reversed. "Dang brat! Do you believe that I won't give you a beating?" Dongfang Wenqing roared angrily. At the same time, he stared at the people who were pricking their ears to listen in, scaring them away. "All right, I'll help you take a detailed look now." Jun Moxie grabbed Dongfang Wenqing's hand and infused a wisp of heaven-earth spiritual qi. Afterward, he sent the pure vitality energy of the power of wood once around his meridians before putting his hands down and solemnly taking out a small jade bottle. "Eat one pill in this bottle every day for half a month. In this half a month, there must be no bedroom activity." Half a month later, Kakik. Jun Moxie revealed a smile that only men knew. But before he could finish up the look with a wink, the jade bottle was snatched away by Dongfang Wenqing and he was wrapped smartly across the forehead. A loud, crisp sound rang out and Dongfang Wenqing roared. "What are you thinking about at such a young age? Harboring all kinds of indecent thoughts and yet able to talk about it with such relish. Looks like your fame as the #1 debauchee in the capital is not undeserved. I'm going to tell your mother and ask her to give you a good lesson." His other hand was like a raccoon that stole a chicken's egg, stuffing the jade bottle into his sleeves with a speed akin to lightning. His voice was loud, and over 100 heads turned around, while 200 over eyes landed onto Jun Moxie's figure. Their eyes all carried a great curiosity, as if they wanted to know just what it was that this little fellow said to make the first master lecture him like that. From the looks of it, it must be an exceptionally indecent thing. Otherwise, why would the first master scold him so loudly in public? Jun Moxie felt extremely incredulous in that moment. This was the first time he'd ever seen such an unappreciative and shameless person. I approached you with good intentions to resolve a huge difficulty in your life. But not only do I not get a word of thanks, in order to cover up your own awkwardness, you pushed me to the front of the stage. If this can be endured, what else cannot be endured? How unbearable! Since it's too intolerable, then there's no need to endure anymore. Jun Moxie's eyes gleamed darkly and he continued in an even more mysterious voice. First Uncle if you complement the pill taking with some movements and chants, it'll be perfect. Perhaps the next time I come here, your children would have formed into a football team. There are still specific movement and chants to do. Fang Wenqing's expression stiffened. He was still feeling glad a moment ago that not only had he finally managed to make this little brat suffer a little, he'd even managed to retain his face successfully. Most importantly, he even managed to gain such a good thing, but who would have thought that before he could even blink, he was immediately splashed with a bucketful of cold water. He'd just pranked the little fellow, and with the vengeful character of Jun Moxie, how could he let himself off? In that moment, he could not help but to be wary. What conditions do you have? State them clearly. Conditions? Jun Moxie shook his head innocently. Could it be that I would have any conditions for an elder? Since you think of me as a base person, I won't bother you with my words. You've hurt me too deeply and saddened my heart. I saw your plight and out of pity and the kindness of my heart, I wanted to help you with your Eric. I was wrong. It was this uncle's fault. This uncle was wrong. Fang Wenqing hurriedly covered Jun Moxie's mouth with his large hands, apologizing profusely. Good niece just what movements and chants is it? Hurry up and tell your uncle. All right. Who asked you to be my uncle? Since we're all family, I'll tell you. Jun Moxie sighed helplessly, as though he'd been wronged greatly. What a good child. Uncle thanks you in advance. Fang Wenqing smiled gleefully. Jun Moxie covered his mouth with a hand and cupped it to his uncle's ear as he lowered his voice as much as possible, until it was nearly indiscernible. This movement needs, in the air, and it might be a little tiring, but you must endure yes. Hang upside down, yes. Yes. Fang Wenqing nodded repeatedly, and his brows were knitted solemnly as he tried his best to memorize every word, deathly afraid that missing a single word would spoil everything. As for the chant, listen well. Remember carefully, it must be done with the movements. Yes, yes. It goes like this. 1 2 3 4. 2 2 3 4. Yin yang harmony. Qian kun nothingness. Change a posture. And then repeat. Jun Moxie taught with a serious face. Fang Wenqing memorized with all his might, until sweat appeared on his brows. My age is high, and my memory is not very good luckily it's not very long, and it's quite catchy as well. Jun Moxie finished reciting and Fang Wenqing's brows were still tightly knitted together as he mumbled to himself. Jun Moxie smiled lightly and asked, Have you memorized it? Fang Wenqing stood up with the same serious look and did not say a word as he hurriedly walked out towards the study room. Looks like a good memory is still no match for the good old ink and paper. Although he'd memorized it, there was still a possibility of him forgetting. It was more reliable to just write everything down. Moxie. Where did your first uncle go? Fang Wenjian sat down and asked suspiciously. Oh, he probably had a little too much to drink. And went to the latrine. Jun Moxie chuckled. After resolving his first uncle's problem, it was Fang Wenjian's turn. Fang Wenjian was much more honest, directly offering his thanks after receiving the pills. Jun Moxie naturally also did not pass him any nonsensical, paired movement sets and chants. From this, one could see that it was better for people to be more honest. I'll see if you dare to make me look bad again. Although you're my uncle, when it's time to teach you a lesson, there'll still be no mercy. Jun Moxie laughed madly in his heart while his shoulders trembled lightly. Following that, he directly clutched his stomach and laughed aloud in a crazed manner. Ha! A chicken bone suddenly flew across the table, smacking firmly against his head, causing Jun Moxie to raise his head with shock. Dongfang old grandma's face was entirely red as she looked at him angrily, cursing aloud. Little rascal! What are you laughing to yourself about? Nothing. Jun Moxie rubbed his head in an aggrieved manner and sat back down. The old grandma looked at him coldly and suddenly with a loud poo sound. The mouthful of wine in her mouth spurted out, and she coughed violently. Her entire face had gone red, and she scolded both angrily and helplessly. You little brat! You're too mischievous. It seems like the old grandma had heard everything. Actually, only two people had heard the entirety of his shenanigans. Mei Shuayan and the old grandma. The two's cultivation was the highest. But Mei Shuayan was an innocent virgin, and didn't understand the meaning behind his words. But the old grandma was an experienced woman, cough cough. Hee. Jun Moxie scratched his head and smiled sheepishly before lowering his head hurriedly to eat. In that moment, he looked exceptionally obedient. Mother, what's wrong? Dongfang Wenjian looked at her mother with confusion. She had been sitting right beside her and had been sprayed with a mouthful of wine. That rascal of a boy. You need to educate him properly. After you all return, remember to watch him closer. This brat is too mischievous. When it's time to beat him, do not spare the rod. Beat him with all your might. The boy can handle it. The old grandma took a deep breath and stabilized herself. However, she still seemed a little out of breath. She had indeed heard those words, but that kind of matter, there's no way to chide him. How was she supposed to scold the boy about this kind of matter? This grandson of hers was indeed a little too overboard. Moxie is so obedient. How is he naughty? Dongfang Wenjian pouted lightly and continued with some heartache. I'm not willing to beat the child. I still remember that when he was mischievous as a kid, I slapped him on the buttocks once. Because of that, I cried for a few days with heartache. Hearing this, the old grandma directly rolled her eyes and fell speechless. This matter, until a long time in the future, on a certain day. Dongfang Wenjian saw his elder brother in the garden facing the rising sun and twisting his waist left and right in an exaggerated manner. Perplexed, he walked over and asked, Big brother, what are you doing? I'm training my hip strength. Dongfang Wenqing did not even lift his head and said, Little brother, how many have you impregnated on your side? These two brothers were practically fellow sufferers. Brothers in the same boat. There was naturally nothing that they wouldn't talk about with each other. Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 625. Revenge on the Three Holy Lands begins. Cough. Cough. I have 5 pregnant already. Big brother. I heard you have quite a few on your side. Mother's spoilt with happiness these days. Moxie's pills are really amazing. Fang Wenjian rubbed his nose and said with some embarrassment. However, his words could not conceal his excitement. Indeed, I have 7 little ones on the way now. Ha! Fang Wenqing laughed proudly, followed by a long sigh. Moxie. That brat. The methods he gave are good, but it's really a little too tiring. Although the women aren't very heavy, but there's still 100-something gene. And it's an hour every time too. We also need to keep doing the chants throughout. It's really tiring. It's not like I only have one. AI. There's so many wives, but no matter what, it's still worth it. Fang Wenqing swiveled his hips energetically, round after round. His eyes filled with a little admiration as he looked at Fang Wenjian. Second brother. You're a few years younger than your older brother. Looks like you're indeed more energetic. Your waist isn't even aching at all. Tiring? Heavy? Chance? Fang Wenjian cocked his head with confusion. Big brother. What are you talking about? Fang Wenqing looked at him with annoyance. It's the thing that Moxie said. The secret method to make babies. Fang Wenjian was completely speechless. What secret method? Isn't it just eating the pills? What? Fang Wenqing was in the middle of his exercise when he suddenly stopped. His body froze like a puppet on the ground, and his head turned around slowly. Suddenly, his hand shot out and he grabbed Fang Wenjian by his shirt and gritted his teeth. Second brother. What did you say? What did you say just now? Fang Wenjian jumped in fright as his body was lifted off the ground. His eyes glistened with fear. I didn't say anything. Say it clearly. Fang Wenqing seemed like a bomb on the verge of exploding. Say it one more time. Say what? You're still acting dumb in front of me, donghua thing. You better tell me properly now. What did Moxie tell you that time about the method? Fang Wenqing lowered his voice and spat the words out through the cracks between his teeth. There's no method. He just gave a few pills. Take a pill every day. And refrain from any bedroom activities for half a month. After that, I was completely cured. Fang Wenjian screeched in a wronged manner as his 2 legs kicked wildly in the air. Big brother. Let me down quickly. Cough cough. I'm going to choke to death. Pooh. Fang Wenjian fell heavily to the ground, rolling and crawling for several zhang as he gasped for breath. Turning around, he saw his elder brother standing completely still, in the exact same position as just now. He was simply standing there without a single movement, like a statue. Heir. Big brother. Are you okay? Fang Wenjian asked tentatively. Fang Wenqing roared angrily, his voice long and loud, reverberating through the mountains continuously and scaring countless beasts away. Fang Wenjian immediately turned tail and fled. After a long time, a blood-curdling scream suddenly rang out from where a little statue stood. Jun Moxie. You little brat. You bastard thing, you little sissy doll. If you're not, I must. Following the wretched cries, a series of loud banging sounds rang out, as though someone was thrashing and smashing things crazily. It was only the next day that everyone discovered that the entire garden, not to mention the flowers, trees, and fake mountains. Not even a single blade of grass was left on that area. The old madam was currently fiddling with her fingers excitedly, making some mental calculations. In just a few months' time, she would have an extra set of grandchildren to play with. The Dongfang family will no longer have to worry about having a lack of descendants. Endlessly relieved. Hearing the savage roars from the garden, she could not help but roll her eyes with annoyance. How did I give birth to such a dumb son? To think that it took him so long to find out. This son of mine is truly a bit slow. AI, those lasses are really slow as well. Is it really so difficult to make a few sets of baby clothes? Just thinking about it caused her to beam with happiness as she mumbled to herself. This is really great. The house will be filled with happiness in a short moment. This is all thanks to Moxie. Back to the present. Jun Moxie left immediately on the second day after leaving behind the sacred movement sets and chants, along with Mei Shuayan and Dongfang Wen Xian. After stepping out of the Dongfang family, he began to head home. The thing that Jun Moxie needed to consider now was how to deal with Blizzard's Silver City. Now that he was finally out of the desolated lands, he finally saw that the pugilistic world was in a state of complete chaos. Everywhere he walked was filled with great unrest. On the way back, Jun Moxie and Mei Shuayan discovered a large number of people from the three Holy Lands. Their numbers were much more than the 90 people from the last time. From the looks of it, the revenge of the three Holy Lands was already unleashed at full force. Not only were they going to deal with Mei Shuayan, they also needed to deal with Chu Qihun. Along the way, discussions about the heroics of Chu Qihun and songs about the supreme assassin Chu could be heard. The pugilistic world was bustling with activity and the name Chu Qihun was hanging on everyone's mouths. The supreme assassin Chu Qihun had become a heroic figure and his image was extremely glorious. He was now a name known by every household and every person on the streets. With each passing day, as long as there was no news of the three Holy Lands successfully killing Chu Qihun, the entire pugilistic world would continue to grow increasingly impressed. Chu Qihun, right now, was the undisputed #1 idol for many youths in Xian continent. His name was awe-inspiring, skyrocketing, and earth-shaking. It was like the first sound of thunder on a clear summer's day, rumbling endlessly and filling the entire sky. His fame was further propelled by the folklores, poems, and songs created about him which spread through the continent with great popularity. A man needs be like Chu Qihun, awe-inspiring and matchless throughout the world. Looking disdainfully upon all, who could stand shoulder to shoulder with him, ancient or modern? An outstanding assassin in a league all of his own. These were the earliest 3 sentences that had first gained popularity. Later on, some geniuses went ahead and added 4 more sentences to it, killing his way through the Holy Lands after massacring the mortal world, slaying supremes after slaughtering his fill of thieves and rascals, elusive immortals, blood ocean, great golden city, all turn into weeping ghosts under his blade without exceptions. The first time he heard this poem, Jun Moxie was in the middle of a meal at a restaurant. With a loud itch, a half-chewed piece of deep-fried dough cake spurted out of his mouth, drawing a beautiful arc as it flew through the sky. After that, he simply grabbed his stomach and roared with laughter. Dongfang Wen Xian furrowed her brows with displeasure. How could the young master of an upper-class family behave so boorishly in public? But just as she was about to scold her unruly child, she saw the prim and proper daughter-in-law of hers. Mei Shuayan was also giggling madly before descending into full-scale mad laughter. If not for her demure feminine outer appearance, her image would be even more exaggerated than Jun Moxie's. What's going on? What are you all suddenly laughing about? Fang Wen Xian furrowed her brows and asked. Noth. Nothing, ha ha ha. It's. Ha 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 ha, nothing. Jun Moxie tried to exercise some self-control, but his body shook heavily, and he simply laid flat on the table and lost himself in his laughter. The dishes and cups on the table vibrated and clanged loudly as he laughed. As the main person involved in the matter, how could he not know how Chu Chi Hun's fame came about? It was the effect of being used as a scapegoat over and over again, with the severity of his crimes growing more and more notorious. First, the crime of offending a supreme, then a holy land. At the start, it was only one holy land. Now, it had grown to 3. Even worse, he couldn't even remove the crimes if he wanted to. That was the worst tragedy. To bear so many crimes innocently, if he still didn't get famous, something would be wrong. At this moment, the 3 were traveling as low profile as they could, and they had donned some light disguises to avoid attracting any attention. After all, they had Fang Wen Xian with them this time, and they couldn't afford to have any mishaps. This was different from when it was just him and Mei Shuayan traveling together. If there were any dangers, they could always easily escape. The 3 holy lands were on high alert right now, and they had no choice but to rein in the sharpness of their blade. Fang Wen Xian was a mother of 3 and her real age was over 40. With some other factors added in, she should have looked somewhat frail and disheveled by now. But due to her 10-years-long coma and the nourishment of the little tree, her looks actually remained in how they were 10 years ago. Her beauty was largely unchanged, and she even exuded the classy grace of a middle-aged woman. Her gentle eyes and eyebrows added an extra delicate and demure look of a young girl to her face. Although she wasn't an unparalleled beauty of a generation, she was still extremely beautiful and heart-captivating. With her son and daughter-in-law accompanying her, it caused her mood to soar. On top of that, her heart had been reignited with hope, causing her entire person to look much more energetic. If she did not don a disguise, her beauty would instantly draw attention from all directions. How could they hope to maintain a low profile? Mei Shuayan was a country-toppling beauty, one of a kind under the heavens. If she went out with her original looks, they would probably be hounded by a pack of love-crazed pursuers. Although they were not afraid of this kind of stuff, it would still be upsetting to the mood. Besides, even if they did not bother about the other stuff, the people from the 3 holy lands would find them and start hunting them down. There was naturally no other option but to proceed cautiously. The group traveled through a small town. Jun Moxie had come through this way before. And at that time, it could be said to have been nearly deserted. There was basically nobody traveling here before. But this time, it was filled with people coming and going and was incredibly bustling. It was as if he had arrived at a different town. It turned out that during this period of time, due to the commotion stirred up by Chu Chi Hun's fame, the entire pugilistic world had become more bold and adventurous. Even this little town was no exception. Numerous people came and went, and it was seething with activity. As they exited the town, the group continued forward for a distance. The snowfall was growing heavier, and Jun Moxie hurriedly led the way into a small inn at the side of the road to temporarily get out of the wind and snow, out of consideration for his mother. This little inn was situated in an extremely out-of-way area. Their business was usually extremely poor, and with the wretched snowy weather as an obstacle, they had even lesser customers. But unexpectedly, the little inn that was on the verge of closing down due to poor business over the past few years was suddenly flocked with customers this year. Fortune rolled in generously. One could see that the appearance of the super idol Chu Chi Hun had directly improved the economy and spurred public spending. Something like this had not happened in the world for several thousand years. The moment news of Chu Chi Hun came out, a lot of those cultivators who were bored till their nuts ached suddenly found themselves with something entertaining to do. Speaking crassly, the people running about and joining in on the hype and gossip were much more dedicated than even the paparazzi on Earth. With such a large snowstorm and in this kind of freezing temperature, even paparazzis would not come out, gathering news from everywhere and spreading them. Rumors emerged in an endless stream. Everyone was chasing wind and clutching at shadows, making groundless accusations without regard. They created stories like hot buns out of the steamer. Countless different versions of the legend flooded the pugilistic world, with only one element constant in all of them: the main character, Chu Chi Hun. For instance, the generation's greatest assassin, Chu Chi Hun and the Three Holy Lands, the story which must be told. The absolute insider story behind the Three Holy Lands' pursuit of Chu Chi Hun. It all started because of a chicken's tail feather. The Three Holy Lands rage, the supreme assassin forced to roam the lands lonely as a wanderer. Who is the supreme beauty granny dropping tears behind him? The stories grew like a raging fire, spreading from one person to 10 and from 10 to 100, traveling through a myriad of rivers and thousands of hills. Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 626. Snowing Hotel. The incomparable influence of the great idol Chu Chi Hun had brought all sorts of places, such as restaurants and hotels, into prosperity. Evidently, the power of idols was indeed infinite. Past or present, on Earth or the Xian continent, this was all indisputable truth. Jun Moxie was just sitting there and he had already heard 3 different versions of the story before he could finish his meal. And each version was enough to trigger his unstoppable laughter. It was close to the new year and it was snowing heavily. But nothing could stop people from crowding into this secluded little hotel. With the heavy snow blocking the path out of the mountains, there could only be more guests coming in and sitting around the bonfire. What was most strange was that the 2 owners of this hotel were still looking unsatisfied and even annoyed despite having such prosperous business and so much income. They were not even interested in receiving money. This dubious phenomenon soon caught Jun Moxie's attention. Mei Shuiyan's skill was superb, but she had little social experience, and was thus not very interested in the social interactions of these commoners. Fang was also born into a large family and seldom had encounters in the society, so she was even more nonchalant about it. On the other hand, as a supreme killer who had lived 2 lives, Jun Moxie had lots of exposure to this sort of social interaction. He paid attention to even the most detailed things, and the more he did, the more he felt that there was something wrong with this hotel. But with the heavy snow, the hotel was undeniably a good place to stay at. They could even get some dubious, but free intelligence by talking with the guests. So, Jun Moxie decided to stay here for the night and would make further decisions based on the weather next day. After all, Fang Xian's cultivation was not of a high level. Even with the assistance of Mei Shuiyan and Jun Moxie, it would still be difficult to travel in such terrible weather conditions. By staying here for 1 day, they could not only have some rest, but could also gather some information. Even if there was not much important information, the interesting stories were at least quite entertaining. As Jun Moxie pondered, Mei Shuiyan delivered a message right into his ear. The 2 owners of this hotel are experts. Yes, indeed they are. Also, this hotel is also a bit strange. Jun Moxie held his teacup, and replied without even moving his eyelids. Strange? Where? Mei Shuayan was a bit surprised. Looking around, this was an ordinary hotel. Except for the expertise of the two owners, nothing was out of place. Even the waiters and the servicemen were as common as they could be. Also, many experts do like to hide in secluded places without interacting with the outside world. So the fact about the two owners could hardly be called strange. First of all, this hotel's location is weird. We traveled for around 100 miles to reach here from the previous town. Although it is short for us, but for commoners, this could take a whole day. The town before us is quite large. If this hotel opened there, they would definitely have a better profit, Jun Moxie analyzed. Right. This place is indeed quite secluded. Mei Shuayan agreed as she nodded her head. There is a mountain range further away. There's obviously even less people there. But if we say that the two owners just want to leave behind all the troubles of the outside world, then this choice is understandable. I've thought of that as well, but generally, it is an illogical choice. Secondly, what are their intentions in opening up a hotel in such a place? Or rather, what benefits do they even have? If they want to escape from all the annoyance, why not choose to stay in the mountains? Jun Moxie threw out a few questions. Also, why are there so many martial arts practitioners gathered here? When we were here last time, there were no guests at all. From the expression of the two old men, it clearly suggests that this phenomenon only started a few days ago. They look so annoyed. If this happens all year round, I am sure they would have long left. But, apparently they could not become infuriated at the annoyance. The only reason would be that they are afraid of being exposed. But as top experts, what are they afraid of? Jun Moxie carried on. Besides that, with so many men from the three holy lands appearing near here, I can deduce that Chu Chi Hun is near here. Or why will everyone be gathering here in such a bad weather? All these people must have been guided here by information deliberately leaked by the three holy lands. Everything seemed to make sense as Jun Moxie continued with a frown. The three holy lands want to consolidate their authority. For 10,000 years, no one dared to defy and humiliate the three holy lands. Chu Chi Hun did not only do that, but also killed many of their men. So the three holy lands were trying to ameliorate the situation. And the best way is to kill Chu Chi Hun publicly. That's why they deliberately publicized what Chu Chi Hun had done. They want to kill him in front of a large crowd so that they will gain a more indisputable authority and reputation. This is the true intentions of the three holy lands. Jun Moxie said, with a short laugh. But wouldn't this be redundant? At first, only they knew about what had happened. They could have killed Chu Chi Hun silently and there would not be a negative impact to their reputation in the first place. Mei Shuayan said, puzzled. You've missed the key part. The two of us knew as well. If they hid the truth and we leaked it, then they would be more passive. That's why they decided to actively publicize it to the whole continent, so that they are at least in control. Jun Moxie raised his eyebrows and said, they are really measuring the stature of great men with the yardstick of small men. You are great. Mei Shuayan rolled her eyes at Jun Moxie and said, if the three holy lands did not publicize by themselves, I am sure you were going to do it. Jun Moxie touched his nose and let out another short laugh. Mei Shuayan had gained a deep understanding of Jun Moxie's mischief ever since they had gotten together. She was exactly right. If the three holy lands did not react in this manner, Jun Moxie would definitely use Chu Chi Hun again to humiliate them terribly. And even worse, The one in control would be Jun Moxie. So, Jun Moxie was obviously unhappy with this perfect reaction from the three Holy Lands. This was a small hotel. There were a total of 7 tables. And they were now all full. Jun Moxie and his companions were sitting at the innermost table, and were able to see the whole room. But the best seat was originally not theirs. There were 5 men here at first. Jun Moxie simply walked up, gave them 5 silver pellets and poked a hole in an extremely thick saber of one of the 5 men with a finger. He then pointed at the door and the hole. There was no conversation. The 5 fierce-looking, buff men left without any complaint. They even helped them clean the table. This definitely made Jun Moxie receive a big scolding from his mother. But after doing so, the effects were surprisingly good. After seeing this, all the other guests at their tables went on talking as if they hadn't seen it. But they obviously showed more restraint. All of them would rather squeeze at the other tables than share a table with this young guy. Everyone knew that their necks were not as hard as steel. But Jun Moxie was in fact very proud of himself and said, "This is the reality of the world with wealth and authority. You are simply great. I have no authority now. But I have money. And fists. Aren't fists equal to authority? The authority to control life and death. Girls. You better learn it. This is wisdom." Mei Shuayan rolled her eyes many times and Dongfang Wen Xian was really unsatisfied by what her son had just said. But the two of them could not counter. On the other side, a table a little farther away, there was a guy talking loudly. Speaking of that Chu Chi Hun, he suddenly let out a long roar and launched his body to boldly rush into the elusive world of immortals like a hero. He yelled, "Return my wife," as he fought fiercely. Jun Moxie held the cup and listened with relish. He then put on a serious face and analyzed. What a real man. That Chu Chi Hun. He even directly killed his way into the elusive world of immortals. So domineering. So daring. Mei Shuayan giggled as her body shook. The 2 owners who were sleeping on the counter also raised their heads sleepily. One of them moved his lips as if saying something. The other nodded sympathetically, then dropped his head and continued to take a nap. Jun Moxie and Mei Shuayan could hear clearly. The old man said, "Idiot." No one knew whether it was Jun Moxie or the other man they were referring to. The more Dongfang Wen Xian listened, the stranger it was. She couldn't help asking, "What are you two laughing at?" "The supreme killer Chu Chi Hun, is that funny?" "What exactly is it so funny?" Please subscribe to this channel, so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 627. Everything was strange. Dongfang Wen Xian had heard many things about Chu Chi Hun on the way here. Chu Chi Hun had already enjoyed his fame for more than 60 years. He was a man that could single-handedly face a large family like the Dongfang family. Until now, she still could not get what part of those stories were so entertaining that her son and his wife kept on laughing. Ever since they entered places with many people, Dongfang Wen Xian had stopped calling Jun Moxie by his name. They did not want to be exposed. "There are too many people here. I will tell you what happened another day. When you know what had happened, you will definitely be entertained as well," Jun Moxie said, as he still laughed. Suddenly, the cotton cloth covering the entrance of the hotel was lifted up and snow rushed in with the howling wind. Some of the more agitated guests were just about to blurt out insults before they sat down in fright. 3 people clad in purple entered like ghosts. The color of their robes reflected in the snow, making everything glitter a purple color. It was snowing furiously outside, but they were dry and clean, free of any snow or dust, as if they just came out of a bath. With the iconic purple robe, they were from the Illusory blood sea. When the three men came in, they looked around at everyone's faces. Wherever they looked, people in that direction felt as if they were stripped of clothes and left in the ice and snow. After a round of observing, they finally walked in and stood beside the big fire basin. Then they noticed that there was no empty table. One of them frowned and tapped on the nearest table beside him. He pointed out the door with a finger. It was obvious, get out. Coincidentally, the 5 men on this table were the same 5 whom Jun Moxie had asked to leave. How could they have known that they were again asked to leave? But this time, they cleared their table even more quickly and left without a word, disappearing into the snow and the wind. These 3 guys from Illusory Blood Sea were obviously in a terrible mood. No one dared to offend them. The 5 men knew well that they were definitely not worthy arguing with those 3. After all, how many people in this world could be like Chu Chi Hun? The 5 men would rather lose face than lose their lives. The hotel immediately fell silent. Those who were boasting about their stories were especially quiet. They leaned low on the table to eat and dared not to even let out the sound of chewing. They were like obedient primary school students. Wine. Dishes. Serve the good ones. One of the 3 men sat down, with his unhappy face. At the counter, the 2 owners raised their heads, looked at them, and then laid back down at the same time. They sighed again. The waiter quickly served. The purple-robed men began to eat and drink, without speaking. Their expressions did not show too much arrogance, but there was a kind of indifference in it. The bustling hotel became silent in an instant. Everyone kept silent like a cicada in cold weather. With Chu Chi Hun's humiliation, all the men in the 3 holy lands were obviously in bad mood. No one dared to offend them. We don't have Chu Chi Hun's skills, nor his courage. Illusory Blood Sea. How imposing. Jun Moxie let out a laugh. Mei Shuayan peered at him, warning him to not make a fuss. It was not a good time to do so. It seems that the Chu Chi Hun must be nearby. Jun Moxie delivered his voice straight to Mei Shuayan. Mei Shuayan answered in an emotionless manner. If we do meet him, should we help? After all, it's our. Jun Moxie smiled without saying anything. He did not agree nor disagree. It was so quiet that one could hear the sound of snow falling in the vast land outside the door. Brushing the ground. The north wind whistled, as it blew back and forth. This small hotel full of people became unexpectedly quiet like a ghost realm. Ha! 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 Outside, there were several loud, high-pitched sounds. It sounded like thin bamboo poles were beating against the hard ice. As it got closer, the exceptionally heavy footsteps and rather rapid breathing were also clearly audible. Closer and closer it came until it finally reached the door. The cloth was again lifted. A stick poked in first before heavily knocking against the floor. With a cough, a man covered in snow moved in with difficulty. It was not until he came in that everyone realized that the man had a broken leg which was hanging there softly. His face was wrinkled and his head was wrapped with thick white cloth, which had a blood stain. The thick, white cloth covered one eye which seemed to be blind. The other eye was full of grief. He also had long and narrow package on his back. Was this tragic man a Xian Qi practitioner? Or how did he make it through the snow? He kept on moving in with difficulty. Everyone stared at him, only seeing that he coughed violently and trembled. The snowflakes fell to his feet, and some ice stuck to him. Several strands of hair from the gap in his hat were frozen to ice. "Get me a jar of wine, 10 buns and a plate of beef." He kept on shivering and could not even talk properly. He produced a few pieces of silver from his pocket with his trembling hands. Everyone frowned as he spoke. He sounded awfully like a strangled duck which had not drank for 7 days. He looked left and right, finding no seats. He was not like Jun Moxie and those 3 from the Illusory blood sea. Instead, he directly sat down before the fireplace. He warmed his hand with his breath and friction before greeting everyone. "Hey, what a cold day." Ever since he stepped in, the 3 men from the Illusory blood sea stared at him. They scrutinized him for a while before one laughed and spoke to the man gently. "My friend, where are you from? What happened to you?" "Ah, thank you for asking. I am not lucky and met a bandit in this kind of weather." The lame man wanted to cry but could not produce any tears as he continued. "I did a whole year of business. With much effort, I finally saved hundreds of grams of silver. I wanted to go home for the new year. Who would expect that I would meet a bandit at Cock Hill and get robbed? All of my expensive personal belongings were looted. Even the coat for my wife and children were taken. Those hundreds of grams of silver were only left with these few I had just used. Most unreasonable was that when I begged for mercy, the burglar broke one of my legs. I know that the roads are hard to walk. Will I ever get back home alive? Indeed, very unreasonable." The man in purple sighed in sympathy. "Robbers are more daring near the new year. They want to have a good start to the new year. But who doesn't? Including those who were robbed. Who don't want to have a reunion with his wife and children?" "Exactly." The lame man clapped his thighs, but felt excruciating pain, his lone eye wincing in pain. "How unlawful and conscienceless they are." "How does the robber look like?" the man in purple asked with care. "Tell us so we can be careful." "I didn't see clearly. He was in white, as if a snowman coming to life. With a few blows, I was already like this. As I begged for mercy, he broke one of my legs. I didn't see his face even until I woke up. Even if I wanted to call the police, I also couldn't describe to them." Till here, the lame man started to cry. The man in purple said kindly, "At least you survived. You are already luckier than others, aren't you?" The lame man sighed for a long time. Then the wine and steamed beef he wanted came up, and he drank a warm sip of wine. Suddenly he lowered his head sadly. His shoulders trembled, and his waistcoat twitched, as if he were crying. Fang Xie sighed and said with a low voice, "With a broken leg and ground hard to walk on. My son, with your wealth, do help this kind of poor guy. Will you?" Jun Moxie had been scrutinizing this lame man. Upon hearing what his mother said, he smiled and said softly, "Mum, you are wrong. Rest assured that this lame man is not slightly tragic. There are so many people that are more tragic than him. Mum, watch on. There might be tragic people in this room, but it would definitely not be that lame man. You never know. Maybe tomorrow morning, he will miraculously be able to walk again." Mei Shuayan laughed softly and said, "Yes, Moxie is right his time. Mother. You see, the 3 superior supremes from the Illusory blood sea did not pay any attention to anyone else in this room except this lame man. With their status, why would they even care about a lame man?" Fang Xie was shocked, and asked doubtfully, "There's something unusual about this lame man?" "Yes. Very unusual." Both Jun Moxie and Mei Shuayan laughed together. with the extremely strong spiritual senses. Jun Moxie and Mei Shuayan had long noticed that the lame man was not ordinary. When he stepped inside, Jun Moxie had smiled and even began to sip his tea. Although he was not 100% sure, but he thought that this lame man should be the supreme assassin Chu Chi Hun, the supreme killer of the day, the one who was at the height of his legend-like fame. Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 628. Collaboration of the two supreme killers. Although the three men from the Illusory Blood Sea also detected the unusual side of the lame man with their expert intuition, they were not able to discern who exactly this lame man was, as they had yet to reach Mei Shuayan's level and did not have as powerful spiritual senses as Jun Moxie. So they began letting down their guard when they had failed to gather much information from the conversation with the lame man. How strong are the two owners? Why can't I tell? Are they stronger than me? Mei Shuayan asked Jun Moxie. Jun Moxie scratched his head and answered. They are indeed strong, but I think they are above me, but below you. They must be using some special technique that perfectly concealed their breath, so you cannot discover their true power. But they are obviously not from the three holy Lancel. If something unexpected is to happen now, then it must be because of these two old men. Jun Moxie did not know that as they were discussing, the two owners were also talking to each other. One said, "Who are these two? The boy and the girl? Any one of them is a dangerous character." The other said, "Indeed. If anything unexpected is to happen, then it must be due to those two young people. But, where are they from? I really don't know." The men from the Illusory Blood Sea don't seem like they've realized the true strength of this lame man. Forget it. As long as they do not provoke us, just let them settle it among themselves. It's none of our business. The two owners continued to lie on the counter, pretending sleeping. If the lame man really is Chu Chi Hun, then why did he come here when three men from the Illusory Blood Sea are present? Isn't he putting himself in a dangerous position? He is facing three superior supremes. Even if he is strong, it is still not wise. Mei Shuayan frowned. There is no ifs. This lame man is definitely Chu Chi Hun. I will swallow this plate if he isn't. His innate craving for blood might not be obvious to you, but is to me. Jun Moxie smiled coldly and slowly continued. I am not at all surprised to see him here. In fact, I think he came here for the three men from the Illusory Blood Sea. Perhaps the supreme killer is now truly infuriated and wants revenge. True. Mei Shuayan nodded in agreement. But how is he going to deal with all three of them? With Chu Chi Hun's skills, he would be lucky if he managed to kill even one of them. Well, there are things you can't imagine of, but nothing cannot be achieved. Fighters like you do not understand true assassination techniques. Jun Moxie smiled confidently. Since Chu Chi Hun dared to come, then the fate of the three of them have already been nailed. I just want to know, with the three holy lands forming such strong network of men, how he is going to escape after he finishes his business. You see, if you want to kill the three of them, there is still a price to pay. Anyways, this guy is really bold. He really dares to emerge. Mei Shuayan gave a smile. Even rabbits will bite if they are threatened. How can Chu Chi Hun not be angry when he is being pursued without reason? He is the supreme killer of the day. How can he bear it? Jun Moxie sympathized. You are the true culprit. And you are still shedding your crocodile tears. If Chu Chi Han really has the strength to assassinate superior supremes, and later knows that the person who really framed him is you, do you think he will let you go? Even if you are confident that you can handle it, what about other people? Mei Shuayan looked at him disdainfully. In order to avoid this from happening, be sure that I won't stay out of this matter. Why are you look at me like that? I didn't say I will do anything to Chu Chi Han. Besides, it's a pity that such a killer should die. It must be a great loss to this world. I meant that I'm going to give him a helping hand. It's a little compensation. So that he can kill these 3 people as soon as possible, with little injury. I really despise the fashion of those 3 from the Illusory blood sea. Jun Moxie grinned and suddenly stood up. He said like a bully, "Feck you. You lame man. Can you not make any sound when eating? I want to puke hearing you." Immediately, a few judging looks were thrown at Jun Moxie. You little brat still want to hurt him when he is already so tragic? The lame man was first stunned. Then he raised his head and shrieked, as if he was about to cry. I have lost everything, and I am half dead. I can't even eat the way I want. What kind of world is this? Is there still justice? His words could be said to be a tearjerker. In conjunction with his extremely bleak image, it was enough to make the world's most cold-blooded people also sympathize with a sigh. Dong Fang Wen Xian frowned at her son. Although she was somewhat puzzled, she also knew that her son would never add insult to injury. Perhaps he had his own deep meaning? So she said nothing and watched. Mei Shuayan gave a silent praise. Although the cultivation of the Dong Fang Wen Xian was not high, her calmness, magnanimity, and wisdom were beyond the reach of ordinary people. Mei Shuayan had been ready to calm her down, but Dong Fang Wen Xian unexpectedly did not say a word and only pondered there. This saved then a lot of trouble. Feck. It's your problem being unlucky. Your injuries can be excuses to disgust me. What a joke. The attitude of Jun Moxie had only gotten worse. His wax-yellow face from the makeup was full of cruelty. He was like an unreasonable rich. He marched forward and kicked the fire basin. A few burning sticks bounced out with sparks. Get lost. So annoying. Feck. Ever since you came in, the place appeared to be like a pig's place. Tell me, how can I eat like this? How? Jun Moxie was twisting his neck and peered at the man sideways. With a hand on his hip, he really was a qualified bully. He spat and continued, Get lost. Get lost. If not, I will break your other leg together with your third leg. Feck. You are like a cockroach that only knows how to disgust people. Jun Moxie was right. This lame man was exactly Chu Chi Han. Lately, Chu Chi Han had been chased around all over the place. He was not able to hide. It was unbearable. Feck. If the tiger does not demonstrate its prowess, is he a sick kitten? What if it was the 3 holy lands? They don't even hear me out. Feck. Is my title fake? Chu Chi Han could no longer bear it. He knew that if it continued, he would eventually be found and killed. Even if I am to die, I will take a few guys with me. Kill one and it's even. If more, then I am profiting. So, he finally decided to retaliate. A ferocious retaliation from a cold-blooded killer. Upon seeing the 3 men from the Illusory blood sea entering this hotel, he decided to follow. The flame of revenge was growing. But now, Chu Chi Han was feeling really gloomy. Having finally gotten in and evaded the questioning from the 3 men, He was getting ready to kill when the three finished their meal and were the least vigilant. But now, there was this crazy little brat. Who even want to dictate how I eat? Feck. He glared at the youngster but couldn't do anything. I could kill this kind of young bastard with a finger, but now there are three superior supremes behind me. It would be easy to kill him. But if I am exposed, wouldn't it be easy for those three to kill me as well? The usually very clever supreme killer was now moaning in his head. Is this really fate? At such crucial moment, this little brat came out from nowhere. Should I really give up this opportunity? Stop staring at me. Am I too handsome? Even if so, are you even worthy looking? Still staring? Jun Moxie yelled at him like an evil bully. He sticked out his hand, pushed on Chu Chi Hun's shoulder. Chu Chi Hun staggered back and almost fell onto the floor. But Chu Chi Hun was suddenly shocked. This push positioned me to the best spot to attack, and the force twisted my body so it was in the best angle to pull out my sword. Don't tell me. Feck. Still quite buff, huh? Jun Moxie cried like a madman and gave the lame man a slap. Chu Chi Hun yelped in surprise and stepped back once again. He was now only 3 steps away from the table where the 3 men in purple sat. One of the men frowned and shouted coldly, "Enough!" And at this exact interesting moment, Jun Moxie kicked the abdomen of Chu Chi Hun, sending him rolling, which landed him right below the table of the 3 men. This position was much better than he had initially planned. To a stander-by, this looked like a complete coincidence. But the ingenious collaboration between the 2 strongest assassins was achieved perfectly with great tacit understanding. What the hell? The 2 owners at the counter raised their heads in unison and cried out as their expression changed. One of the men in purple smashed the table and stood up. He was furious. Little bastard? Are you trying to get yourself killed? No manners at. He was clearly directing it to Jun Moxie. But he could not finish the sentence. Suddenly from below the table, a bright and gentle flash glowed and grew mystically. With a scream, there was only bloodshed. A shadowy figure broke the table and launched into the air. Countless flashes of light like the blinking stars went for the neck and the heads of the 3 men. Jun Moxie's kick gave the 3 superior supremes a death sentence. The Autumn Dew invincible sword. It was like dream and fantasy. Iconic move of the supreme killer. Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 629. Every blow is fatal. Blood had splashed everywhere below the table. 5 legs were separated from their bodies. Only the man who stood up to scold Jun Moxie reacted faster and was able to save one of his legs. The smell of blood diffused out. It all happened too quickly. It was too shocking. No one knew whether Chu Chi Hun really knew how difficult it would be to live without a leg. But now these 3 men definitely had first-hand experience. This unexpected occurrence took everyone by surprise. With the collaboration of the 2 supreme killers, perhaps even venerables would not be able to defend against it. The other 2 in purple robes at the table were sitting there quietly, just about to enjoy their wine. Their eyes looked at this side with interest as if they were watching a play. The competition between these commoners was really none of their business. How would they expect that something astonishing was about to happen to them? And it was definitely very cruel to them. They were instantaneously disabled. The 2 of them only felt the emptiness below their knees accompanied by the comforting feeling of blood spraying out. They did not even have enough time to feel pain. And Chu Chi Hun's sword was already coming down at them. The sword wind shot upwards as everything was being smeared into fuzziness by the flashes of the sword. It was like a dream and fantasy above the table, while below was all blood. A sea of blood. This scene actually suited the name of where they came from, the Illusory Blood Sea. It was not just the Illusory Blood Sea in name, but also in reality. With two screams, the two experts who had their legs chopped off smashed the chair they were sitting on as their faces were distorted. Their bodies flew up into the air, and they were faced with the illusory sword flashes of Chu Chi Hun. With their remaining power, they were giving their final blow. Blood was gushing out from everywhere, including their chests, foreheads, and faces. With the sudden assassination, they lost their legs and were cut in many places. They had become very bloody. To retaliate, they were using their full strength, forcing the blood to spray out with more pressure, forming a column of blood. They looked like a bloody Astro Boy to Jun Moxie. The originally cozy hotel had immediately become hell. Blood spilled all the way into the dishes and wine on all the tables. Everyone was petrified. The superior supreme that had previously stood up shook around to balance himself. His face was pale white. With a grief bellow, he produced a cold sword and leaped up, pointing it at Chu Chi Hun. Chu Chi Hun did not make a sound. His autumn dew invincible sword mysteriously appeared and eerily disappeared. His body was also flickering under the sword flashes. Occasionally, he would straighten up his posture, and there would be numerous shadows of him emerging in midair. Jun Moxie finally understood why it was so easy to make this guy a scapegoat. They fought in very similar styles. Chu Chi Hun's style was too similar to the sword techniques derived from the yin and yang escape. Sometimes in front, sometimes at the back, he was everywhere. This dude is really a worthy scapegoat. Jun Moxie watched the fight with great interest. With two clear sounds, the two purple-robed men in the air fell like broken-lined kites, and there was a dazzling, bloody hole in each of their throat. Chu Chi Hun's body also had a few bloodstains, but his facial expression remained the same. The long sword emerged with brilliance from the fuzziness. With a snapping sound, it made contact with the sword that was reaching up toward him. Chu Chi Hun slowly landed on the table, standing with the sword. Blood slid down the autumn dew invincible sword and dripped into a wine bowl, causing ripples. Supreme Killer Chu Chi Hun. What a wicked strategy, said the last man standing, as if he was a madman wanting to devour Chu Chi Hun. Upon the contact, he rolled once in midair before finally standing with difficulty. He had only one leg left after all. His leg was chopped off from the knee, together with a piece of cloth on his robe. Only droplets of blood were oozing out as he used a secret technique to slow down the bleeding. He stood on one leg and looked at Chu Chi Hun with hatred. He was not badly shaken despite the serious injury. Indeed. Now you have lost a leg. Do you understand how difficult it will be to walk the future path? Chu Chi Hun's voice changed. It had become cold with a strong killing intention. His eyes were no longer aimless, but were staring sharply at the final superior supreme. Is that all the three holy lands have? Han Shan Chang. How dare you pursue me? The three holy lands will have to pay the price. And you will be dead. Dead? Ha! You are just a frog sitting in a well. How can you tell how big the Milky Way is? Now you have exposed your whereabouts. I wonder whether you can still escape. Chu Chi Hun. You are merely an arrogant brat. I will now show you what a true expert is like. If one can achieve the highest level by using only assassination skills, then what is righteousness for? With your dirty tricks, You will be haunted by yourself. Can you withstand it? You will be the dying one. Han Shanchang laughed as his eyes flashed with anger. My dirty tricks might not make me the strongest, but they are definitely sufficient to kill boastful guys who call themselves righteous. Chu Chi Hun's stares were like blades. Han Shanchang. Your leg is chopped and your veins and meridians already have openings. You have no more chance for self-explosion. I respect that you are a superior supreme. You should just kill yourself. You are definitely not my match now. Ha! I will live and die together with my brothers. Since they have died, I have no intention of continuing to live. But before I die, I have to figure out one thing. Suddenly, he turned his head and looked at Jun Moxie fiercely. Who on earth are you? Why do you cooperate with Chu Chi Hun against the three holy lands? Do you know what price you're going to pay? Who I am? Jun Moxie looked at the puddles of blood with shock. He suddenly hollered in a panicking manner. Murder! Bloody murder! Save me! It's so scary. Call the police, call, this lame man is committing murder. Whoever you are. Whether it was intentional or not, you and your family are dead. Those who do wrong will always pay the price. Han Shanchang was trembling all over as he was infuriated by Jun Moxie's fake acting. He stared fiercely at the Jun Moxie. Then he suddenly turned around and faced Chu Chi Hun, wielding his sword. Suddenly, he growled loudly. Chu Chi Hun, you are dying with me. The biggest enemy in front of him was still Chu Chi Hun. As for this young man, even if he was really a subordinate of the killer, he was still like an ant, just the ant. As long as he could survive in the end, this young man would have no escape. Han Shanchang's sudden roaring voice was instilled with his strongest Xian Qi. It was so powerful that he broke a big hole on the roof with a loud bang. The sound waves rolled out and echoed about all the mountain ranges. The snowflakes were pushed back up, and none could fall through the big hole. Chu Chi Hun glared at his enemy coldly. The Autumn Dew invincible sword wielded into a dreamlike colorful trajectory as he said, the people from the three holy lands are indeed extraordinary. You were still talking righteously moments ago, but now you are asking for help. Ha! Superior Supremes also know how to call for help. Are you ashamed by saying that you will live and die together? What a joke! You are really an eye-opener to an evil guy like me. Do you think you can get away now? Before he finished speaking, Chu Chi Hun's body leaned forward as if he was about to charge forward. Han Shanchang bellowed and pierced with his sword. But as he reached forward, the audaciously charging Chu Chi Hun in front of him vanished into thin air. Simultaneously, an extremely sharp sword wind was approaching his back. Han Shanchang was also a top expert. He did not panic facing this. With another roar, he accelerated backwards right into the wind without dodging. He filled his back with the most pure Xian Qi and slapped backwards with his hands. He wanted both of them to perish together. Bang! Chu Chi Hun's body flew off the ground and as he spat out a mouthful of blood in midair. This was the most heavy blow that landed on him during this battle. He took advantage of the force from the blow and escaped through the hole on the roof. With his body embraced in the dream-like sword flashes, he then disappeared into the snow. An instant kill and an immediately retreat. That was exactly how a supreme killer should be like. Jun Moxie clearly felt that Chu Chi Hun peered at him with a sharp gaze as he left through the opening. It contained appreciation, anger, curiosity, and some awe. Chu Chi Hun was very sure. The flaming sticks kicked out formed the basin covering his back. The push made him closer to the target. Then the slap made him even closer. Before the kick made use of all the advantages created by the first 3 moves. The opponent was made arrogant and indifferent. And that was enough for a top killer to succeed. On top of all that, the last kick made everything look like an accident. And that was why Chu Chi Hun was able to be successfully kill 3 superior supremes with such speed. For simple moves with perfectly matched words that made the young man seem like a perfect bully also gave Chu Chi Hun a perfect trap to assassinate the 3. It was all carefully planned and perfectly executed. Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 630. The Misty Illusory Manor. In the last step of the strategy, the target was still dreaming and watching the thing like a show. Their fate was sealed. The control, the subtlety of the psychological gamble, and the ingenuity and adaptability of the layout were amazing. Chu Chi Hun had to admit that he wouldn't have done so well in that position. He must be a godly assassin, killing without trace and without using his own hands. Chu Chi Hun was suddenly quite afraid as he thought about what if this person was an enemy. With this thought, he disappeared into the snow even quicker. Chu Chi Hun was gone like wind. Han Shanchang then finally slowly fell facing up. Blood shot out from him, appeared like an arrow piercing through his chest. His eyes were wide open, his throat gurgled, and he fell to the ground with a bang. His dead, fish-like eyes looked at Jun Moxie and he struggled to ask, "Who are you?" "Me? I am a human." Jun Moxie answered with a shocked expression. "Who, exactly are you?" Han Shanchang's eyes were bulging out even more as the blood spraying on his chest had slowly foamed. "I am a man." Jun Moxie gave the most honest and accurate answer. "You." Han Shanchang was so angry with these honest and accurate words that he leaped off the ground before falling down again, dropping dead. WTF? I am not lying. Do I look like a girl? Jun Moxie spread his hands and said innocently. How can this dude have so little tolerance and die from anger? Forget it. He can't even win against a lame man. Keeping him alive is a waste of rice and grain. At this moment, the little hotel exploded in screams and all the guests rushed out as if they saw a grenade thrown into a public toilet. They all dashed into the snow and escaped. Jun Moxie laughed and said, "It's done. Let's go." "Wait a minute. Young man, shouldn't you give the 2 of us some explanation for killing people in our hotel and cause so much destruction?" Behind the counter, the 2 old men, who had both been in a state of sleep, finally stood up and looked at Jun Moxie. One of them was red-faced and looked more presentable while the other was too skinny and had a pimpled nose. The contrast between them was really funny. They did not even look at the bodies on the ground. It seemed that they had become accustomed to the pungent smell of blood. Both of them looked at Jun Moxie with caution. "Feck. Are you a blind old man? The murderer. The lame man just flew out like that and you didn't say a word. And now you are questioning me? What does this murder have to do with me? Even if you complain to the gods, they won't listen. I've never seen anyone that frames people like this. Do you think I am an easy target? No way." Jun Moxie shouted exaggeratedly. "Don't try to bluff me, young man. If it wasn't for you, Chu Chi Hun wouldn't have dealt with the men from the Illusory Blood Sea so easily." The more handsome old man smiled and said, "Young man, we don't have ill intentions. We are just curious. Who's your teacher? There are not many guys who could nurture such a young hero like you. I am really curious." As he laughed, He looked very strange, as if his whole face had been divided into two halves. Looking carefully, right down the middle of this man's face was a sword mark that had cut the whole face into two halves. It was not obvious when he did not smile, as he had had proper conditioning and a good recovery. But when he smiled, the pink and red muscle started to roll out from the wound, and it was really frightening. "Who's my teacher?" "My teacher is my wife," Jun Moxie said with a smile and pointed at Mei Shuayan. Mei Shuayan stood up and slowly walked over. She stared at the red-faced old man and finally said in a low voice, "It turned out to be you too. If you don't laugh at this moment, I really can't see that." Ren Pingsheng and Yi Jiu Kuang. "It's amazing that you two have changed a lot. And you've made amazing progress. I believe now, Lei Baoyu and Bu Kuang Feng are far from your opponents. Congratulations." "Who are you, young lady? How did you recognize the two of us?" The red-faced old man and the old man with a bad nose looked at each other. It was not until now that he seemed really surprised. They both lived here in seclusion. Nobody had ever seen through their past identities. How could such a young girl immediately reveal their identity? "You don't have to care about who I am, but I know you definitely can't handle today's matter," Mei Shuayan said faintly. "I believe that the three holy lands will soon come. You are now strong enough. But if you don't want to cause trouble, you should stay out of the way. I think since you choose to retire here, you are also trying to avoid trouble." The two owners were the supreme and powerful men of the previous generation, and were equally famous as Lei Baoyu and Bu Kuang Feng. The red-faced man was Ren Pingsheng and the pimple-nosed man was Yi Jiu Kuang. Yi Jiu Kuang's eyes flashed and laughed. "Thank you for your concern. Although we may not be able to provoke the three holy lands, if the three holy lands really want to deal with us, I'm afraid they will have to think twice." The tone of voice was arrogant and compelling. He sounded very confident. Mei Shuayan was about to go out, but when she heard the words, she suddenly turned around and looked at them with her clear eyes. Suddenly, a rare smile came out. "You are not afraid. Are you now people of the Misty Illusory Manor? Is the entrance near?" "Yeah." "No wonder you can progress so quickly. No wonder you two choose to open a pub in a place where you didn't go before or after the village. I thought you were trying out something different in life. But now I see the real reason." "Who the hell you?" Ren Pingsheng and Yi Jiu Kuang were shocked. They shifted in front of Mei Shuayan and their clothes started to bulge up. It was like facing a very strong enemy. They didn't seem to be hesitant in potentially fighting Mei Shuayan, should she not give a satisfactory answer. "I am the same as you," Mei Shuayan said softly after a short pause. "I am from the Tian Fa cave. Please deliver my words if you go back." "Ah. From Tian Fa." Ren Pingsheng and Yi Jiu Kuang were relieved. They looked at each other and they both could see the frustration in each other's eyes. "What words? Please say." "Over the years, we have put in too much. Guarding the secret sanctuary took us too much effort. The Misty Illusory Manor did not give any instructions at all, and instead set up a mist that only allowed entry but not departure. For us, the loss is too great to make ends meet. Now, the three holy lands are more aggressive, and it seems that they really want to completely destroy Tian Fa. If you want to keep the balance, first, warn the three holy lands to converge. Otherwise, we will not hesitate to go to war. Secondly, get rid of the mist. Let us restore the inheritance of the Holy King of Tian Fa." Mei Shuayan said softly, "I have been looking for the Misty Illusory Manor for a long time." Are you no longer concerned with the 9 nether secret sanctuary? When Mei Xueyan said this, Jun Moxie even heard the heartfelt bitterness in her words. Ren Pingsheng and Yi Jiu Kuang looked at each other and put on a hard look on their faces. Young lady, what you said is not invalid. But we have no way of influencing it in the first place. Of course you cannot. So, please just deliver the message. If you do not respond even after the war for seizing the heavens, we will no longer do anything about the secret sanctuary. Mei Xueyan said coldly and firmly. The war for seizing the heavens. We, TNFA, have spent thousands of years putting our efforts into it. But now we have come to a bleak situation in which the 3 holy lands keep on persecuting us. We have also guarded the 9 nether secret sanctuary since the ancient times, and you will send people to us only when it is extremely critical. Later, you even laid a trap like mist. She continued resolute. Since you don't care about this continent at all, do we, the Xian beasts, care more than you? In the future, whether the aliens occupy the Xian continent or the 9 nether secret sanctuary breaks free, we are still the same old TNFA forest. It's the same for us. Please deliver this message. That's all. Let's go. Mei Xueyan said to Jun Moxie softly and held Dongfang Wen Xian's hand. Ren Pingsheng and Yi Jiu Kuang felt really awkward, but they let them pass. At the doors, Mei Xueyan raised her head to look at the snowstorm. She suddenly stopped and asked slowly, Yunbi Chen is also in the Misty Illusory Manor, isn't he? Actually, no. Yi Jiu Kuang paused and answered. They have invited him, but Yunbi Chen denied. Mei Xueyan acknowledged and with a puff, the 3 disappeared. Staring blankly at the spot they had disappeared from, Ren Pingsheng suddenly gave himself a slap. He said in frustration, Curiosity really kills the cat, why did I even ask? It turned out to be TNFA Cave. This story will be continued to chapter 631. For those of you who are not subscribed yet, please subscribe. The interesting and best stories will be updated. See you again in the next episode.